Hello, my name is Aaron Balke, and today I wanted to show off my newest project called Jot. Jot is the first web application I've ever built. It is a web application in order to simplify clinical note-taking for a private mental health practice. And what they were running into was they were reusing a lot of the same statements, sentences, terms in multiple different clinical notes, and they wanted to just be able to paste those blurbs, automate the pasting of those blurbs into a note for the clinical session and all. The structure of the web app is there is no framework, it's just raw JavaScript on the front end. I didn't want to overcomplicate things for myself. I wanted it to be as simple as possible. In the future, I'll most likely be using React or Svelte or something like that when it comes to building a front end. But it's just raw JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. The back end is written using the Python Flask framework, and that is hosted on Vercel. And then for storing the sentences, the database being used is a MySQL database on PlanetScale. For the demo version that's available to check out, it does not use the MySQL database. It's just Python dictionary since stuff isn't being stored long term. So, but on the actual production version, it does use MySQL. So, what we could do here, we'll log in, email, password. Got all the good authentication storage stuff. You got salting, hashing, and all for user information. Sign in here. When you log in, it will ask what kind of note you're wanting to make. So if you're wanting to make a basic session note, a first-time intake report for a session, or a couples therapy note, you can choose one of these. So we'll choose basic note. And this is the main page of the web app. So you're able to immediately make a heading. So the middle section is where you're able to edit stuff and add sentence structures, and then on the right hand side is the actual note that you're taking. And my camera is blocking it, but there is a little copy button down there at the bottom that you're able to click to copy everything from the note section into your clipboard. So let's start making one. Name, let's say Aaron Balke. Date, we'll say today. Start time, we'll say 10 a.m. Noon for the end time. Fee, let's say $100. I don't know any CPT codes, so we'll just press some random buttons. You don't have to put in all the fields, but they're all available there, and they'll all auto-populate on this side for the note. So we're able to go through, do all that. Then you can start going through the different sentence structures. So the state of the client, global assessment, the client's estimated global assessment function, and you're able to choose some of these. Let's say appeared to be superior in most areas of life with no indication of emotional difficulty or distress, etc. So when we click that, it automatically puts that global assessment snippet in the beginning, adds the rest of the note here. You're able to go through and add in the other notes as well. And when you change information, so for example, the client's overall level of mental health and emotional functioning suggests no difficulty, it'll automatically switch it out once you change it to severe. And if you have ones that are in the same group, so like affective state here, we have the client emotional state appeared generally positive and it has improved. So it just automatically adds in the semicolon and adds semicolons if you add more than two, and continues to move stuff around and change the punctuation in order to form an actual sentence from that information that you're clicking here, the little sentence snippets. In addition, with all of the statements, you are able to search for stuff. And so, for example, if we want to look up the word suggests, we're able, if we could spell correctly, all the options that say suggests for the state category is in here. If we want to go to themes and look up anything that includes exploration, all of these ones include exploration. So that's just an additional feature for quality of life. There are text boxes where you're able to write whatever you want, and so if description of treatment contact, the duration of treatment contract states, I don't know, 30 minutes of treatment. And so that all automatically populates as well. One important thing to mention is all of this is happening client side. The only time the server and the client are connected and talking to each other is when you log in, when you choose a note, and when you add a statement. All the other information and stuff happening is just on the client side, and that's important for HIPAA compliance because you don't want the heading information like the name, the address, date of birth of the client, of the practice's client being sent to a server somewhere and then back. That's a massive HIPAA compliance issue. And so everything just is sitting here. Once the note is copied, you're able to just paste that into something secure like Simple Practice, or I believe there's also Therapy Notes is the other one where you're able to store stuff long term. This is just for taking the note and just takes place client side. When you do add a note, you are sending it to the server, a new note to the server. So for example here, the intake session was held at the client's parents' house, let's say. So when you click that, it automatically adds it here and sends it to the server for future MySQL calls when you log in again. But this information shouldn't have any client PII or PHI. This is just little snippet sentences that you can combine together to create the note, the specific session note for that client. Pandas is being used on the Python portion to clean up the queries from the MySQL database. I just have such a hard time reading just thousands of JSON and Python dictionaries, so Pandas makes it a little bit more readable for working on the back end. When it comes to security, there are a few things to mention. Number one, there is principle of least privilege, and so when you're logging in, when you're getting a note, when you're calling a note down from the server, you are just in read-only mode. I'm not sure this made sense to me, but I'm not sure how in most web apps this works, but I set that to be read-only, and you're only able to write when you're adding a new note, when you're doing an add statement here. Everything else is just read-only because you want to try to avoid having the client able to do crazy things to the MySQL database. And along those lines, when you do make a call to the server from the client, it does get filtered for SQL injections. And so if it's expecting, for example, a note ID is a one-digit number. You're able to cut any alpha characters, any special characters, and so you just need 0 through 9, and once you have those, and you only need one of those. So there's stuff like that on the back end in order to keep things like SQL injections from happening. When it comes to things that can improve, in a perfect world, I would prefer not to have to worry about authentication of any sort. I would prefer to have like OAuth or another authentication service where just Google handles the authentication, so I don't have to. That's just in a perfect world what I would like, because that would take a lot of burden off of me. In the future with other web apps I build, I hope to do that instead of doing my own authentication. Some other things are just basic quality of life stuff. When it comes to the statements, I would like there to be a delete option so you can delete statements. I also want to add, instead of just being able to copy notes out of the web app, I want to be able to export them as PDFs. And finally, I'd like to expand the search capabilities in order to make it more flexible and be able to piece together what you're looking for a little easier than the one I've got now. The current one is just, it sees if what you're searching is included in the other statements. And I'd like it to be a little bit more flexible than that. The reasoning behind using Flask as the backend is number one, I'm very comfortable with Python. Number two, if I was making more calls between the client and the server, I think at most I think there's just 3 different types of calls. There isn't really the need for a really durable and strong option for a web server, and so Python Flask covers it well enough. And the other thing was I was going to be struggling with JavaScript as is. I did not need to also struggle on the back end, so in the future maybe I'll do Node.js or something like that, but Flask was okay for this one. And yeah, that is Jot, my simplified clinical note-taking web app. If you are interested in checking it out, there will be a link in the description to my GitHub, and on there you'll be able to log into the demo version, check it out, see what it's all about. Yeah, and expect more stuff like this. It was a ton of fun. First web app, first time using JavaScript, and I really want to make more web apps. This was awesome. I want to learn some React, some Svelte, and some Node.js perhaps in order to get better at the web applications. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a good one.